There is a honey that costs $8 and permanently eliminates wound infections that antibiotics cannot reach. It does not slow the infection down. It does not contain the infection. It kills the infection at the molecular level using 4 simultaneous mechanisms that drug-resistant bacteria have no answer for. A pharmaceutical company took the exact same compound, put it in a sterile tube, and charges $50 per application. The same molecule, the same chemistry, the same result. One costs $8 at any health food store on Earth. The other costs $50 per tube at a wound care clinic, and a $70 billion industry has spent decades making sure you never sat down and did that math. 8,000 years ago, a figure clung to a rope ladder on a Spanish cliff, risking life and limb for one thing, honey. The Cueva de la Arana, the spider cave of Valencia, locked this moment in stone. A human, surrounded by swarming bees, reaches into a hive, not for ritual, not for art, but for something worth any danger. Honey was survival. It was energy, sweetness, and a prize so valuable that entire communities watched and remembered. This is not the story of a luxury. This is the story of a necessity. But the leap from food to medicine came fast. By 2100 BCE, Sumerian healers pressed honey into wounds. Clay tablets pressed with cuneiform spell it out. Honey mixed with oil applied to ulcers that refused to close. Not a guess, not a myth, a prescription. The world's oldest medical texts don't suggest honey, they command it for festering skin, for eyes clouded with infection, for flesh that would not knit itself back together. The Sumerians wrote the recipe thousands of years before modern medicine even had a name. This was not superstition, it was observation, repeated and recorded. Honey didn't just soothe, it stopped rot, it pulled infection from the skin. When every other remedy failed, honey remained. From the caves of Spain to the clay libraries of Ur, the message was clear: honey works. It was the first line of defense, not the last resort. Before antibiotics, before antiseptics, before industry, there was honey, harvested by hand, trusted by the first healers who ever wrote a prescription. Hospitals stood in Egypt long before the word even existed. Inside those stone walls, the oldest surgeons on Earth reached for honey, not as a prayer, but as a tool. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, written around 1600 BCE and copied from even older sources, spells it out in surgical detail. Case 3, a head wound. The prescription is precise. Mix fresh honey with grease and lint. Pack the wound. Keep out rot. This is not a spell, it's a protocol. 15 times in 48 cases, honey is the answer. Not for luck, for results. The Ebers Papyrus, just as ancient, lists honey in hundreds of recipes. Recipe 754, honey, malachite, animal fat. Spread it on ulcers that refuse to close. No magic words, just a formula repeated across centuries. Grease for moisture, minerals for strength, honey for life. The same logic, copied and recopied, survives in every fragment. Infection meant death, honey meant a chance. Greece picked up the torch. The Hippocratic doctors, working 400 years before Christ, wrote it down in the Corpus Hippocraticum. On ulcers, honey cleans wounds, softens the hard edges, draws out the poison. Oil and honey, mixed and pressed into fistulas, plasters for inflamed flesh. They watched, they measured, they trusted what worked. No gods, no smoke, just honey again and again, because honey closed wounds when nothing else could. 3 civilizations, 3 sets of surgeons, one answer written in ink and blood. Honey heals, not a myth, not a legend, a medical fact carved into the oldest scripts we still possess. Trenches, mud, and blood. World War I was a slaughterhouse for skin. When bullets and shrapnel tore flesh, infection moved faster than any surgeon. Antibiotics did not exist. Sulfa drugs were a rumor. Yet, in field hospitals from 1916 to 1918, desperate doctors turned back to the oldest ally they had, honey. Gauze soaked in honey was pressed into wounds that refused to close. Not a myth, not a folktale. Medical logs from the British front record cases where rot stopped, where gangrene retreated, where men survived what should have killed them. The war raged, but honey fought back. Decades later, another battlefield, this time in American clinics. Walter Reed, the military's flagship hospital, faced a new enemy, wounds from Iraq and Afghanistan, crawling with MRSA and a cyanidobacter. These bacteria shrugged off vancomycin, burned through silver dressings, and left soldiers trapped in a cycle of infection. Doctors reached for Medihoney, a tube of sterilized Manuka honey applied straight to the wound. The result? Bioburden down by 80% in just 2 weeks. Deep necrotic wounds, once written off, began to close. In a 2011 case series, 87% of MRSA infected wounds that had failed every antibiotic responded. Not a supplement, not a placebo, a protocol, saline rinse, 5 millimeters of honey sealed for 48 hours. Repeat. Watch the infection disappear. The World Health Organization in 2014 took a stand. For children over 1 year, honey, not cough syrup and not codeine, was the recommended treatment for cough. Safer, cheaper, just as effective. 3 continents, 100 years, and the same answer again and again. When medicine fails, honey does not. The question is not whether honey works. The question is why we ever stopped using it. The mystery behind honey's power didn't last. In the 1980s, a New Zealand biochemist named Dr. Peter Molen ran a simple experiment that changed everything. He took Manuka honey and mixed it with catalase to destroy all hydrogen peroxide, the ingredient everyone thought made honey antibacterial. The killing didn't stop. Bacteria still died by the millions. Something else was at work. Molen found it methylglyoxal, known as MgO, a molecule so potent it doesn't just slow bacteria, it shreds them from the inside out. MgO locks onto bacterial proteins, gumming up the gears of life. No ordinary honey comes close. Manuka's MgO levels run 100 times higher than anything in the supermarket. But MgO is only the beginning. Manuka honey attacks on 4 fronts. First, MgO destroys proteins and DNA. Second, sugars pull water out of bacteria, collapsing them through sheer dehydration. Third, the honey's acidity, pH as low as 3.5, wipes out enzymes and halts growth. Fourth, and most important, MgO's power cannot be neutralized by catalase, the enzyme in blood that normally destroys hydrogen peroxide. Bacteria cannot adapt. They cannot fight back. This is not just an old wives' tale. It is a chemical assault, proven in the lab, unstoppable in the wound. Dr. Molen's discovery didn't just explain the past, it rewrote the rules for modern medicine. FD, a clearance changes everything. In 2007, Medihoney, a tube of sterilized Manuka honey, became a legal wound dressing in the United States. K082610. That number is not just paperwork, it is a declaration. This is medicine, not folklore. But the story does not end with approval. It splits in 2. On one side, the pharmacy shelf, a jar of UMF 15 plus Manuka honey, $8 to $12, packed with the same methylglyoxal that kills MRSA in the lab. On the other, the hospital supply room, Medihoney, $15, $30, sometimes $50 for a single dressing. Same species, same chemistry. The price multiplies, the packaging changes, but the molecule that does the work, MgO, remains untouched. The label is the new frontier. UMF stands for unique Manuka factor. UMF 10 plus is the minimum for real antibacterial action. UMF 15 plus is the standard for infected wounds. UMF 20 plus is the heavy artillery reserved for the worst cases. Below UMF 10, you are buying sugar water. Above UMF 15, you are buying a weapon. The numbers matter. The price tag is a story of regulation, sterilization, and a market that knows how to turn necessity into profit. The lesson is simple. Read the label, not the marketing. The difference is not in the honey, it is in who gets to sell it and what they can charge. 1 jar, 1 wound, 1 patient who had run out of options, a diabetic foot ulcer, 5 months open, 2 rounds of antibiotics, nothing but pain, and a clinic quote of $2,400 for a treatment that might not even work. Instead, a $42 jar of UMF 20 plus Manuka honey, not hospital grade, not a prescription, just honey, thick, golden, unbranded. The instructions were simple. Clean the wound, spread a thin layer, cover, and repeat. In week 2, the edges started to contract. In week 4, pink tissue replaced dead flesh. By week 6, the wound was gone. No surgery, no side effects, no return of infection. The price of healing? $42 and a protocol older than civilization. This is medicine, ignored, unpatented, and sitting on a shelf. For every patient bankrupted by chronic wounds, for every family told there are no more options, the proof is not in a lab, it is in a scar that finally closed. Right now, $8 can outmatch $50, nature beating pharma at its own game. Manuka honey kills where antibiotics fail, 4 mechanisms, 1 answer. Medihoney is cleared by the FDA. Walter Reed uses it. Ancient wisdom, modern proof, yet hospitals stall. The real wound? Profit over healing. Demand better, demand the cure.